Yo, Aaron here and welcome to this guitar lesson for Movement by Hozier. Now, this song doesn't actually have any guitar in it, and all the parts that I've kind of transcribed for this video are taken from the keyboard parts and then the general harmony, okay? We've got that awesome intro in there, so I've made sure to stick that in. Another thing to note is that the album track is in a higher key than the live version, so you will be able to play along with the album version, but not the live versions because they're in a different key. So we're going to start by learning that awesome intro. Then we'll go into the chords one at a time, and then we'll go through all of the sections and the part that I've kind of written for the song. So I hope you enjoy this. I enjoyed making it, and without further ado, let's get learning. So I'm going to teach you two versions of the intro because the harder version is pretty hard, and I want everyone to be able to have a shot at playing this because it does sound really, really cool. And I recommend playing it with a pick because then you're going to be able to get that sound that we can clearly hear in the intro of the song. But it doesn't matter if you do want to play it fingerstyle, it's not a big deal, you'll just miss out on the attack, okay? So let's do the easy version. We start by taking our fretting hand third finger and placing it on the 6th fret of the G string. That's our first note. And then the B string is actually muted by the underside of this third finger. And that's really important when it comes to strumming and getting that sound that we just talked about. And then we take the first finger and we place it on the 4th fret of the high E. And then we just strum through the G, B and high E strings. Easy enough, right? Then we take our third finger and we move it up to the 8th fret of the G. And again, the B string is muted by the underside of the third finger. And then the second finger is on fret 7. And we strum the same 3 strings again. Then we're into bar 2 of the intro, and we take our first finger and we place it on the 7th fret of the D string, and we get this note. And then the underside of the first finger is now muting the G string, so we should hear that from the G string, and then the pinky is on the 10th of the B. And we're going to strum the D, G and B strings. Then we're going to take the third finger and we're going to place it on the 10th fret of the D. And the first finger goes on the 8th fret of the G. And we just strum the D and G strings. Then we're into bar 3 of the intro. Our first finger comes down to the 4th of the D. And then our third finger is on the 6th of the G. And we just strum those two. Then we take our third finger up to the 7th of the D, and our second finger to the 6th of the G, and we strum the D and G strings once again. Then we're into the last bar of the intro. This might prove a little bit of a stretch. We're going to take the pinky, and we're going to place it on the 7th of the A, and then the first finger is going to go to the 4th of the G. Bit of a stretch, okay? And then the D string is muted by the underside of the pinky, and you strum the A, D and G strings. If that is too much of a stretch, you can always try a different version by bringing your first finger up to the 7th of the A and then using your pinky on the 9th of the G. And then the D string is muted by the underside of the first finger, and you strum the A, D and G strings. And then our final chord is a power chord. We take the first finger and take it to the 4th fret of the A string, and then the third finger goes on the 6th fret of the D, and the pinky goes underneath it on the 6th fret of the G string, and we strum the A, D and G strings. So let's move on to the harder version. Our first finger goes to the 4th of the A, and then the underside of that first finger is muting the D string. Then the pinky comes down to the 6th of the G. And the underside of that finger is muting the B string. Okay. And then the second finger goes to the 4th of the high E. And again, if you haven't tried this kind of chord before, maybe a bit of a stretch, a bit tricky. And then we just strum all 5 strings from the A string downwards. For our second chord, we take the first finger up to the 6th of the A. The D string is muted by the underside of the first finger. Then our pinky goes to the 8th of the G. The underside of the B string is muted by the pinky. And then our third finger goes to the 7th fret of the high E. And that gives us our second chord. And we strum from the A string downwards as we did before. So in the second bar, it's almost the same as we did before, but we start with an open A string. Our first finger is on the 7th of the D. The underside of that first finger is muting the G string, and then the pinky is on the 10th of the B. And you strum the A, D, G and B strings. The inside 4 strings. For the next chord, our first finger comes to the 8th of the low E, and the underside of that first finger is muting the A. The pinky goes to the 10th of the D, and then the second finger goes to the 8th of the G, and you strum the E, A, D and G strings. Now at the end of this bar, just at the end, there's a little grace note, and the third finger moves to the 6th of the D string before going to this shape. And for this shape, we've got our first finger on the 4th of the A. It's barring across to the 4th of the D, and then the pinky is on the 6th of the G. So altogether, third finger on that 6th of the D to the chord. And then our next note, we hold on to that chord, but we pluck the D string on its own. So we should have. Then for this next shape, our pinky comes to the 7th of the D string, and then we're going to use our second finger, and this seems a little odd, but you'll see why in a second. Our second finger goes on the 6th of the G. So we have this. And then we've then got this third finger spare to go on the 7th of the A. So that bar altogether. Then we bring the pinky up to the 7th of the A string. The underside of the pinky is muting the D. Then the first finger's on the 4th of the G. And at the end of that bar, we place the third finger down onto the 6th of the D string. And we must let the other notes carry on ringing out. And for that last chord, it's simply a power chord. So we put the first finger on the 4th of the A, the third finger on the 6th of the D, and the pinky on the 6th of the G. And that's it for the hard version of the intro. So our strumming pattern is as follows. Down, 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 down. And that is it. Let's move on to the next section. So on your screen right now are all of the chords that we use in this song. If you feel like you know all of these and you just want to get round to learning the sections, then you can skip ahead with the link in the description. So the first chord we need to know is a standard A major chord in open position. We're going to start with an open A string. We take our first finger to the 2nd fret of the D. We take our second finger to the 2nd fret of the G. And our third finger to the 2nd fret of the B. And keep all of those fingers down at the same time, and then we have a high E string as well. And we pluck 5 strings. What we don't want to do is pluck the low E, because that isn't part of this version of this chord. We also might want to bring our thumb over. It's quite common to use the thumb to mute the low E while strumming. The next chord we need to know is an F sharp minor bar chord. We're going to create a bar on the 2nd fret of all of the strings. And the first thing you might want to do is just check that you can get a sound from each individual string, and then we take the third finger and we place it on the 4th fret of the A, and then we take the pinky and put it on the 4th fret of the D, and then that's it. The bar does the rest of the work, so the whole chord individually should be, and that's F sharp minor. The next chord we need to know is C sharp minor. So we're going to create a bar across the 4th fret, but we're not going to bar all the strings, we're only going to bar 5 of them, and the tip of the first finger should be touching the bottom of your low E string. Once we've got that bar, we take the 3rd finger to the 6th of the D string, we take the pinky to the 6th of the G, and we take the 2nd finger to the 5th of the B. And then the bar does the rest of the work as before, and then we just strum 5 strings. The next chord we need to know is a standard E major shape in open position. So we have an open low E, then our 2nd finger comes to the 2nd fret of the A, our 3rd finger comes to the 2nd fret of the D, and our 1st finger goes down on the 1st fret of the G. And we've got an open B and an open high E, and we strum all of the strings. Then we've got a B major starting on the A string. Now there are 2 ways to play this chord, an easy way and a hard way. So the harder way, the bar chord version, is this, and we create a bar across the 2nd fret, but we have the tip of this finger against the low E string as we have before. Once we've created the bar, our 2nd finger, and it's going to be a real stretch, goes to the 4th of the D, our 3rd finger to the 4th of the G, and our pinky to the 4th of the B. And then the bar is barring across on the high E. Quite difficult, that. If that fails you, you don't have to create a bar, you can just have the 2nd fret of the A with the 1st finger, and then you can kind of bar across with your pinky like this, flatten your pinky out across the D, G and B strings, and you should have. Be careful not to press down too hard because you'll include the high E, and that's not part of the chord, just the inside 4 strings. The next chord that you need to know is C sharp. To get to C sharp from B, we just go up 2 frets, same shape, and then we can also do this with it like we did with the B shape. So everything that was here, this one and this one, but just 2 frets higher. Then we want C sharp with an F in the bass. So what we're going to do is move our 1st finger and bar across the 6th fret of the D, G and B strings. And then the 3rd finger goes down on the 8th of the A. And we should have. So we're moving the bass note from here up to here. We're then going to learn another version of A. We're going to take the thumb and we're going to place it on the 5th fret of the low E, and that should then also mute the open A string. We're then going to take the 3rd finger to the 7th of the D, the 2nd finger to the 6th of the G, and the 1st finger to the 5th of the B. So altogether we get. That gives us an A major, and that's important because it's going to set us up for the next chord, E over G sharp. So for this chord, the thumb has moved down from the 5th down to the 4th, and then it also mutes the A string as it did before. The 3rd finger goes to the 6th of the D string. The 1st finger goes to the 4th of the G, and the 2nd finger to the 5th of the B. And we should have. And then when we get to the bridge, the next shape that we need to know for this song is a C sharp minor, but it starts up here, okay? Trust me, I have tried to make this as less complicated as possible. It's just the nature of the song. So we take our thumb and it goes on the 9th of the low E, and then that'll also mute the A string. and then the third finger comes to the 11th of the D, and the first finger bars across the remaining 3 strings. And we can strum through all of the 6 strings, and we want to make sure the A string isn't making a sound. And then for the next chord, everything kind of comes down a fret. So what we end up with is the thumb on the 8th of the low E, a muted A string, third finger on the 10th of the D, first finger on the 8th of the G, second finger on the 9th of the B. Then we kind of take everything down again, sort of, not exactly, but the thumb is the 7th of the low E, a muted A string, the third finger on the 9th of the D, the second finger on the 8th of the G, and the first finger on the 7th of the B. It gives us a B major. And for our next chord, F sharp with an A sharp in the bass, we're going to have the thumb on the 6th of the E, the low E, a muted A string, our third finger on the 8th of the D, our first finger on the 6th of the G, our second finger on the 7th of the B. So that gives us a sequence for the bridge. And that's it. You've learned all of the chords in the song. So we're going to go through each of the sections of the song slowly at 55 beats per minute. Obviously the original track doesn't have any guitar in, so I've written it the way Hozier might play it. We're going to start the pre-chorus at 47 seconds because we've already learned the intro part at the start of the video, and that carries on up to that point over the verse. So when we get to the pre-chorus, it's going to go as follows. 3, 4... And then at 56 seconds, we get to our first chorus. And this is where we're going to start applying the strumming pattern, okay? So our first chorus goes as follows. 3, 4... Okay, so we need to notice where we've got the strumming pattern and where we've got the single strums. So the single strums come in on the A chord to the E over G sharp, down to the E, temporarily back into the strumming pattern, and then we've got single strums again on the B, E, and then into the C sharp minor, back into the strumming pattern. Okay. Then at 1 minute 9 seconds, we've got verse 2, which is identical to verse 1. So the part that goes, etc., etc. We learned at the start of the video. Then at 1 minute 37 seconds, we've got chorus 2, and that is identical to chorus 1, except to repeat the whole thing twice, okay, with the strumming pattern that we just learned a second ago. Then at 2 minutes 18, we have the bridge, and the bridge played slowly goes as follows. Okay, and all of that goes round twice. And then at 2 minutes 45 seconds, we have the chorus again, but this time it's repeated 4 times. For those of you who have any kind of pedals at this point in the song, you may just want to crank up the distortion so it sounds a little bit more. Etc., etc., just to kind of match the feel and the vibe of the song. Well done for making it through the whole video. As usual, any suggestions and improvements and song requests are all welcome in the comments section. And be sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any future lessons. Until next time, check out one of these.